So before I ask you to start to do the work in earnest, that is all about this process of inquiring into your own nature, into really the pulsation of the soul or your heart, the very sense of what it is you were meant to be and how you were meant to contribute to this larger world of which you are a part, I think it'll be helpful if we go over one or two abiding principles, some of which actually you find in many different traditions in many different parts of the world. And they really begin to help us understand the nature of life purpose, because very often there's some misconceptions about it. And so let's dive into that. So really, so much of uh, how we sort through the complexity of the world that we live in, the nature of desire, the nature of discernment, the nature of how we possibly create and or co-create our own destiny. Really, it all begins and really will continue to be with us, whether or not we're attentive to it or not, is this concept of dharma. Dharma is a centerpiece, really a central piece in the yoga tradition. But not just the yoga tradition, as I said. The word Tao, of Taoism, for example, is actually born from the same term, same Sanskrit term, dharma and Tao. So dharma usually is translated as duty or law or rule, path. It's also translated as purpose and order, righteousness, dharma. So it's really, there's no term in our language, in English, that comes close to the richness of the term. And what does it refer to? Well, the origin of the term is based on the Sanskrit prefix, dar, and it means that which holds and organizes the greater truth. It's some kind of intelligence that pervades the universe. On a micro level, we can think of the principle of homeostasis. I'm sure you know at least some sense, you have some sense of what that word is, and that is that, when I overheat, I perspire. When I take in more of the sodium than I need, I get thirsty. And so finding that balance is an imperative that your body is constantly seeking. It seeks to keep you in balance. And when you get out of balance, too hot, high density of sodium, etc., it will actually promote you finding balance. So it will give you the impulse and the imperatives to always return to a state of balance. And we see this throughout nature. It's why the leaves fall from a tree as the end of summer and winter is approaching, in that transition in fall. It's why, in fact, we're beginning to see the migratory routes of animals and birds, for example, changing as the climate is, in fact, changing. Human beings, we gestate for a specific number of months, about 9.5, as opposed to an elephant for about 2 years. The point is that there is this intelligence that the more we are aligned with it, it supports our well-being, physically, psychologically, emotionally, and we could even say spiritually. And when I start to move away from Dharma, from this macro, again, all pervading intelligence, it begins to make me more susceptible to disease and dis-ease. And the teachings are very clear that it's really by following Dharma, this sense this sense of intelligence that guides the whole, that's all pervading. The more I am in line with it, the happier, the healthier I will be, the more I will thrive. The other idea we have to understand is that there's two dharmas in a way. There's the dharma, which is the macro universe. Began to describe that, it's all pervading. And then there's individual dharma. That the way I describe it is we are each a note in the symphony of creation. And our individual dharma is to play our note or our unique instrument. We've all come in with specific proclivities, perhaps even weaknesses, capacities, and gifts. And so the more that we, through discernment and enlightened self-interest, By enlightened self-interest, I mean the kind of understanding of ourselves, the way we think, the way we act, the way we emote, the more it comes out of this deeper understanding of what it means to be uniquely me, the more then I support the greater whole. And so that we're very clear, the essence of that inner intelligence is inherently wisdom and compassion. So it's not like you're going to become more in tune with yourself and align with Dharma and serve your highest self-interest and come out of Dharma. It is implicitly part of the whole. So serving your Dharma, what's called Svadharma, is in fact this uniqueness that almost practically would call it your spiritual DNA that makes you uniquely you. And by the way, no two people's Dharma is the same. And by the way, this is very much, the subtlety of this is so much at the forefront of the yoga tradition, the greatest book perhaps of the yoga tradition. There's only a couple or three that I would point to as being the most meaningful. The Bhagavad Gita being one of them, tells us that listening to that inner voice, that voice of our individual, our Svadharma, Sva means self, our self-dharma, our self-purpose, our unique purpose, is how we thrive. So that is the basis of yoga. Understanding that within you is the blueprint to your own happiness. And this Dharma is as much a part of the fabric of who you are. Even according to the teachings, it was part of you at the moment of conception. And it perhaps was the instrument that put you in the unique position which you were born, the parents you were born to. We don't really have to go much more into the background of that, but there's this intrinsic sense that there is an inner wisdom that you can uncover, discover, and to the degree to which you honor it, you can find long-term, lasting happiness and fulfillment. The Bhagavad Gita, I take this quote from, that's very relevant. It says that it is better to serve one's own dharma than to succeed in the dharma of another. Nothing is ever lost in following one's own dharma, but competition in another's dharma breeds fear and insecurity. And some translations even describe it as breeding disaster. So following your own dharma, following the unique purpose that was embedded in your spiritual DNA is essential. It also means that no matter how successful we are in the world, no matter how hard we try, unless we're authentically living our dharma, true success and happiness will be elusive, and true fulfillment will be as well. So, our spiritual DNA, that's what we're uncovering. That's what and by the way, it's been in you all along, as I said, moment of conception. So the work that we'll be doing together will be uncovering those clues, really gathering the information that, almost like a trail of breadcrumbs. It's the Hansel and Gretel story, right? Where we now have to kind of re-engineer, re-follow those footsteps, because in the meantime, it's quite possible that we have begun to shape our life based on other people's preferences or prejudices, or society's prejudices, or the uniqueness of the time we're living in. And the result is we so often fall short in stepping into the full force, the powerful guiding intelligence that nature has endowed you with, that is meant to be your path to your most meaningful destiny. In the first video, I just quickly mentioned that quote from Rumi, and let me just give you the whole thing, most of the whole thing now. So Rumi wrote this. He says, "There's one thing in this world that you must never forget to do." He said, if you forget everything else, and not this, there's nothing to worry about. But if you remember everything else and forget this, then you will have done nothing in your life. And he goes on to say, so human beings come to this world to do particular work. That work is the purpose, and each is specific to the person. If you don't do it, you will be wasting valuable keenness and foolishly ignoring your dignity and your purpose. So, to be clear, uncovering it, discovering it, learning how to step into it more fully, finding great value in who you are and what has made you who you are, and that inescapable truth that lives within you, that is the work of the four desires. As I began to say, the work will ask a lot of you these days together and over the course of these weeks that you'll be doing this immersion and this uncovering. It is challenging. There's no doubt it's challenging. As I said, part of the process will require me to give you assignments and do my best to pointing you in the direction of how to fulfill them and how to uncover the great truths that these questions I'll be asking you and challenging you to consider. They'll be a pointing in themselves. Information gathering. Your soul has been leaving you clues all along. And by the way, this is the yoga of self-reflection, the kind of missing link in the yoga world of the modern day. Many different terms define that process of yoga: jnana yoga, vichara, vitarka. These are terms where we're reasoning and contemplating and self-reflecting and inquiring and self-studying that give us the deep, profound answers that help us set and ensure that we're living the ideal course of life and walking the path wholly and fully. I want to emphasize the point, this is not studying some ancient tradition. You are the field of the study. It's all well and good to know that purpose is important, but if you don't know yours, and if you don't live it, then it won't do you any good to know purpose is important. I've heard many times that from people who've done many yoga intensives, deep practitioners who've done lots of work, and many have said that this is the hardest yoga course they've ever done. So I want to front load. I know we're all capable of doing it. If you're willing, we can take this journey together, and by the end of it, you will have a map, a roadmap to the life you live. In the book title, The Four Desires, the subtitle is Creating a Life of Purpose, Happiness, Prosperity, and Freedom. Those ideas, purpose, happiness, prosperity, and freedom, are the four desires. And the soul is prepared to guide you to all four things: purpose, happiness, prosperity, and freedom. Keep in mind, I've said it, but I want to emphasize it. This course is a process. It's a process of self-inquiry, a process of self-reflection. All the answers are already inside of you. You, in fact, have those answers. If you will settle and drop into quietude, those answers will come to you. And I will help you. There are techniques, meditation, relaxation, specific contemplations that will bring those answers to you. They're waiting to be discovered. They're waiting to be known. And in a sense, they're waiting to guide us. So this is the work about understanding our own minds, what you were born with. In the next video, I just want to give you a few more ideas before we begin the first brief exercise. And what we'll talk about is why, one more reason why purpose is, well, it's probably more than one reason, but the final things to think about in terms of the value of purpose. So we'll see you in the next video. Thanks.